Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling the idea of tiny changes leading to remarkable results.
That's right.
We're talking atomic habits.
Yes.
And to help me dig into this idea, I am so happy to be joined once again by our expert.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Sure.
I'm excited to dig into this too.
All right, so, full disclosure, we put out a call to action to our listeners, asking them to share some excerpts that resonated with them from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Grief book.
And that's going to be the foundation of this deep dive. And wow, some of these excerpts, some of them really got me thinking about things in a new way. Um, but lucky for me and for all of our listeners today, we have our expert here to kind of break down and distill all this wisdom and hopefully help all of us,
hmm
put it into practice.
Absolutely. I think that's the key part, right?
Yeah.
We can have all this information,
Mm-hmm.
but if we're not putting it into practice, it's kind of useless. So I love that.
Yes, exactly. And one thing that really stood out to me from the get-go is James Clear's own story. Like, he didn't just, think about this or theorize this. He lived this.
Yeah.
This guy recovered from a pretty serious baseball injury.
Yeah.
Couldn't even drive for months.
Yeah. It was quite the recovery, I think, for him.
So, like, how do you even begin to rebuild?
Well, I think it's fascinating because he actually used a lot of the principles he wrote about to get back on track.
Interesting.
He didn't want to get overwhelmed with how much work he needed to do.
Well, makes sense.
And so he really just focused on tiny improvements.
So it's kind of an embodiment of this atomic habits idea.
Exactly that. It wasn't about making these massive leaps, but it was about the consistent tiny gains that compounded over time.
Right, and that really speaks to that classic analogy that he uses in the book, 1% improvement each day
Mhm.
leads to you being like 38 times better after a year.
Exactly.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, it really does show the power of these small things that we might not think are significant, but over time really can add up.
Absolutely. And it makes you think, like, what could we accomplish if we applied that kind of thinking, that 1% better each day idea to...
Other areas of our lives.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's where it gets really exciting.
Yeah. So, like, if we want to start changing our habits, like, where do we even begin? Like, what's step one?
Well, I think Clear does a great job of breaking down habit formation into 4 key stages.
Okay.
The cue, the craving, the response, and the reward.
Okay. I like it breaking it down. Let's go through those one by one.
Yeah.
So the cue is like the trigger, right? It's like the thing that kicks it all off.
It's like the signal to your brain to initiate this habit loop.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the trigger.
Okay, so like a really concrete example would be like seeing your running shoes by the door.
Exactly.
Totally.
That's the cue.
That's the cue. The trigger that makes you think, oh yeah, I should probably go for a run.
Right. And then that thought, of going for a run, like
Mhm.
that's the craving. Yeah. So the craving is that motivational force behind the habit. So in this case, it might be that craving for a runner's high, or just the feeling of accomplishment that you get when you finish a run, or just the desire to move your body.
Right, and that craving then leads to the actual response, which is like putting on the shoes and going for the run.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So the response is the actual action that you take in response to the craving.
Okay, and then after the run, you have that, feeling of accomplishment. Maybe your muscles feel good.
Yeah, you get those endorphins.
You got those endorphins. That's the reward.
Exactly. That's the reward. It's the satisfying feeling that makes you want to repeat the habit. So it could be the endorphins or just the sense of accomplishment from sticking to your routine.
Yeah, like your brain is telling you, hey, I like that. Do that again.
Exactly.
So it all kind of clicks into place. But then, Clear takes it a step further with this idea that our habits actually shape our identity.
Yeah, that's one of the most powerful ideas, I think, in the book.
It's like, I don't know, I never really thought about it like that. It's not just about, doing a certain action. It's about becoming a certain kind of person.
It's like that shift from I want to write every day to I am a writer.
Oh, that's such a good way of putting it. I like that.
Yeah. And I think that shift in mindset can be really, really motivating.
Yeah, because then, like, if you identify with that, like, if your habits match your identity,
Yeah, then it reinforces that self-image, so it becomes a positive feedback loop.
it all starts to click into place. So instead of focusing on just, individual actions, we should be thinking about the kind of person we want to be.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
And then align our habits with that.
Absolutely.
So I'm the kind of person who prioritizes my health. Therefore, I'm going to exercise regularly and eat healthy foods.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that Claire does so well is he gives us all these practical tools and strategies to actually translate that into action.
Yeah, one that I thought was super practical was this idea of environment design.
Yeah.
You can actually manipulate your surroundings to make good habits easier.
It's like setting yourself up for success. I
Exactly.
love the analogy he uses of the Japanese electronic manufacturers in the 70s. They redesigned workspaces
Hmm.
to eliminate waste and improve efficiency.
I remember that.
And we can do that in our own lives.
We can optimize our
Yeah,
environment.
yeah.
Yeah, so like instead of putting that bowl of fruit in the crisper drawer where you can't see it,
Right.
put it right on the counter.
Or having your workout clothes laid out and ready to go
Yes.
instead of, having dig through the laundry basket.
It's about making those good choices the most obvious choice.
Yeah, I love the obvious choice
Yeah.
because sometimes our willpower is low.
It really is.
And so if we don't have to think about it, if it's just right there in front of us, it makes it so much easier.
It really does. But
Yeah,
sometimes, even if you have everything perfectly set up, you still need a little extra push to
absolutely.
just get started.
Yep.
And I think that's where this 2-minute rule comes in.
The 2-minute rule. I love this one.
I know.
It's so simple, but so effective.
Yeah, and it's because sometimes even the smallest tasks can feel so daunting.
Right.
So this is all about breaking down those new habits into those ridiculously easy, bite-sized actions.
Right. It's about removing the friction of starting.
Okay, so give me an example of the 2-minute rule in action.
Okay, so let's say you want to meditate for 30 minutes every day, which can be quite a lot.
Yeah.
The 2-minute rule would say, just sit down on your meditation cushion.
Okay.
Don't even worry about meditating. Just sit for 2 minutes.
Okay, so you're not even thinking about the meditation. You're just thinking about sitting.
Exactly. And a lot of times what happens is once you're there, you end up meditating anyway.
You're like, well, I'm here. I might as well.
Exactly. But it's about removing that initial resistance.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
tricking your brain into thinking, oh, this isn't so bad.
Exactly.
I like it. I like it. So we've talked about getting started building good habits, but we all have those bad habits
Oh, yeah. We all have them.
that we're trying to break. And I know we talked about making those bad habits unsatisfying, but are there other strategies that we can use?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things to remember is that our brains are wired to prioritize immediate gratification,
Okay.
even if it means sacrificing those long-term benefits.
Right. So it's like your present self versus your future self.
Exactly.
And your present self is like, I want that donut.
Give you the donut.
I want to watch that next episode.
Exactly.
Even though you know you'll regret it later.
Exactly. And that's why willpower alone is often not enough.
Yeah, it's exhausting to have to constantly resist.
Exactly. It's a losing battle.
Yeah.
So I think a more sustainable approach is to find ways to make those good habits more appealing and to make those bad habits less appealing.
And there's actually a name for that, right?
Yes, it's called temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling.
Yeah, so it's this idea of linking something you want to do with something you need to do.
So you're basically hacking your brain's reward system.
Exactly.
Okay, so can you give me an example of temptation bundling?
Sure, so let's say you love watching a certain TV show, but you also know you need to get more exercise.
Okay.
So you could only allow yourself to watch that TV show while you're on the treadmill.
Okay.
So then you start to associate that pleasurable activity with the thing you need to do.
So you're basically turning exercise into a treat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And over time, you might even start to look forward to those workouts.
You're like, oh, I get to watch my show.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. So we've talked about, external strategies, but is there anything we can do just in our minds?
Oh, yeah.
Like in our thinking, to kind of shift our perspective
Absolutely.
and make these changes stick.
Yeah, I think even the language we use can have a big impact on our mindset.
Okay, I remember this from the book.
Yes.
This whole have to versus get to.
Exactly. So instead of saying, I have to go to the gym, you could say, I get to go to the gym.
Oh, I love that.
Right. Or instead of, I need to work on this project, it's, I get to contribute my talents to this project.
It's so subtle, but it totally changes how you view it.
Exactly. It's about reframing those obligations as opportunities
I love that.
and recognizing that you have the choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that can be really powerful, especially when you're feeling unmotivated.
Absolutely.
Just changing the language you use can actually make a difference in your attitude.
I think so too.
I'm a believer. Okay, so we were talking about hitting those plateaus in our habit building journey.
Yeah.
Those moments when you're just not as motivated anymore.
Right. It's like you're making progress, you're feeling good, and then it just kind of tapers off.
Yeah,
It's
and it's
all-
like, how do we keep that momentum going, when that initial excitement fades?
Well, I think that's where the Goldilocks rule comes in.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So it's this idea that we're most motivated when we're working on tasks that are right on the edge of our current abilities.
So it needs to be challenging, but not too challenging.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense for like physical activities, like progressively overloading your muscles.
Right.
But how does that apply to something like writing?
Well, let's say you want to build a habit of writing every day.
Okay.
If you set a goal to write 1,000 words a day right off the bat, that might be too much.
You'd be overwhelmed.
Exactly. You'd burn out.
Yeah.
But if you start with just 100 words, that feels more manageable.
Right.
And then as you get comfortable with that, you gradually increase the word count.
So you're kind of like progressively overloading your writing muscles.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. But something else I've been thinking about is like we've talked a lot about cravings
Yeah.
being this driving force behind habits.
Right.
But what happens when those cravings are for things we know aren't good for us?
That's a great question.
Like, how do we deal with those temptations?
I think it goes back to understanding how our brains are wired.
Okay.
We're programmed to prioritize that immediate gratification,
Yeah, instant reward.
even if it means sacrificing those long-term benefits.
Right, so it's that whole present self versus future self thing again.
Exactly.
And your present self is like, give me all the cookies.
Get me all the junk food. Let's watch TV all day.
Exactly, even though you know your future self will pay the price.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I think willpower alone is often not an effective strategy.
It's exhausting.
It really is.
You can't willpower your way through everything.
You really can't. So I think a more sustainable approach is to find ways to make those good habits more appealing.
And to make those bad habits less appealing.
Exactly.
I'm trying to remember what Clear calls that in the book. It's like temptation bundling or something.
Yes, temptation bundling. It's a great strategy.
Okay, remind me how that works again.
So basically you link something you want to do with something you need to do.
Oh, right.
So you kind of turn that chore into a treat.
Okay, so like I only let myself watch my favorite show
Right.
while I'm on the treadmill.
Exactly.
So I'm basically tricking my brain into associating something pleasurable with something I wouldn't normally enjoy.
Exactly.
I can get behind that. But is there anything else we can do, like just on a mental level,
Yeah,
to shift our perspective
absolutely.
and kind of, make these changes stick?
Yeah, even the language we use can have a big impact.
Yeah, I remember this from the book. It's the whole have to versus get to.
Exactly. So instead of saying, I have to go to the gym,
Right.
you say, I get to go to the gym.
I get to move my body. I get to feel strong.
Exactly. It's about reframing those obligations as opportunities
No, I love that.
and recognizing that you have the choice.
Yeah, because it's true. Like, we do have the choice.
We do.
And sometimes we forget that.
We get caught up in that feeling of, I have to, I should.
And it becomes a burden.
Exactly. But when we reframe it as I get to, it becomes empowering.
Right. And then it doesn't feel so much like a chore.
Exactly.
But I'm wondering, does this whole, habits and identity thing ever become limiting?
Ooh, interesting question.
Like, once we've formed a really strong identity around a certain habit,
Yeah,
can it ever hold us back from evolving?
that's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Clear does address that in the book.
Okay.
He talks about the importance of reflection and questioning those assumptions and beliefs and making sure that our habits are still serving us.
So it's not just about blindly following those ingrained habits.
Exactly.
You need to step back and evaluate.
Periodically.
Yeah. Okay, so it's like those professional athletes, who are constantly analyzing their performance,
Exactly.
even when they're at the top of their game.
Even when they're winning championships, they're still looking for ways to improve.
So we need to bring that same level of self-awareness to our habits.
I think so.
And ask ourselves, like, is this still serving me?
Is this still aligned with my goals?
If not.
Then it might be time to make a change.
Right. It's about being open to evolving.
Yeah.
This is making me think about those Japanese manufacturers again.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't just design their workspaces once and then call it a day.
Right. They're constantly evaluating and refining.
And we can do that with our habits too.
Absolutely.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about progress and continuous improvement.
I love that.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about, environment design,
Yeah.
shifting our mindset.
Right.
But what about our genes?
Oh, interesting.
Like, do our genes influence our ability to build habits?
That's a great question. And I think that's where the concept of finding your game comes in.
Okay, finding your game. I like it.
So while our genes don't determine our destiny, they definitely influence our areas of opportunity.
So some people might be naturally better at certain things.
Exactly. Whether it's athletics, music, academics.
Right. So it's about understanding our natural inclinations and then aligning our ambitions with those areas.
Yeah, it's like choosing to play a game where the odds are in your favor.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, so when we work with our natural strengths, progress is easier, motivation is higher.
It just flows.
Exactly.
It makes me think about Michael Phelps.
Oh, yeah.
Like the guy was born to
He
swim.
was built for it.
He had those physical
Those
traits.
long arms, those flexible ankles.
But it wasn't just his genes that made him an Olympic champion.
Right, it was his dedication, his hard
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, he put in the work.
Exactly. And that's where I think environment design comes back into play.
Okay.
Even with the best genetic predispositions, we still need to create an environment that supports those habits.
So it's about minimizing distractions, setting ourselves up for success.
Exactly. And making it as easy as possible to stick to those routines, even when our motivation is low.
Right, because let's face it, there will be days when we're just not feeling it.
Absolutely.
So how do we navigate those difficult times and stay committed?
That's where I think the power of reflection and review comes in.
Okay.
It's not just about blindly repeating those habits. It's about continuously evaluating our performance.
So it's like those athletes again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need a system for tracking our progress,
Uh-huh.
identifying what's working, what's not working, and making adjustments as needed.
So we're basically becoming students of our own behavior
I love that.
and constantly striving to refine our approach.
Exactly. It's not about perfection, it's about progress.
I love that phrase.
Mhm.
It's not about perfection, it's about progress.
It really is.
Yeah.
And as we become more adept at reflecting on our habits and making those adjustments, I think we unlock the ability to not only achieve our goals, but to continuously evolve and grow.
Right. So it's about becoming the best version of ourselves,
Yes.
one tiny change at a time.
I love it.
This has been so insightful. I'm really starting to see how these seemingly small changes
Yeah,
can actually lead to remarkable results.
absolutely.
But I think it's time to get a little more tactical.
I agree.
What are some specific techniques and strategies
Yeah, let's get down to brass tacks.
that we can use to actually build and break those habits?
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's talk about some practical techniques,
Yeah.
things we can start using today to implement these atomic changes.
Yeah, I think one of the simplest but most effective strategies is habit stacking.
Habit stacking.
Yeah, so you're basically building this habit tower,
Okay.
brick by brick, using your existing routines as the foundation.
Oh, yeah, I remember this from the book. It's about linking that new habit to something you're already doing automatically.
Exactly.
Like if I make a cup of coffee every morning right after I wake up,
Right.
maybe I tack on, 5 minutes of stretching
Exactly.
or read a page of a book.
Yeah, you're basically piggybacking on those ingrained behaviors to make it easier to incorporate something new.
Right, so you don't have to rely on willpower as much.
Exactly.
You're just kind of tricking your brain into adding this new thing onto something you're already doing.
Yeah, you're tapping into those existing neural pathways so it feels less like a chore.
I like it. I like it. So we talked about the 2-minute rule before, too.
Right.
Could you combine that with habit stacking to
Absolutely.
make it even more powerful?
Yeah, so imagine you want to start meditating each day,
Okay.
but the thought of sitting there for like 20 minutes is just overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
So the 2-minute rule would say, just sit down on your meditation cushion,
Okay.
maybe for a minute or two.
Hmm.
And to make it even easier, you stack it onto an existing habit. So let's say right after you pour your morning coffee, you sit on your cushion for 2 minutes.
And chances are, once you're there, you might end up meditating for longer.
Exactly.
Okay, so we talked about building good habits, but what about those bad habits, the ones we're trying to break?
We all have those.
I know we discussed making them unsatisfying.
Yeah.
But are there other strategies?
One technique that can be really effective is temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling.
So it's basically this idea of linking something you want to do with something you need to do.
Oh, right.
So you turn that chore into a treat.
So I only let myself watch my favorite show
Right.
while I'm on the treadmill.
Exactly.
And suddenly exercise doesn't seem so bad.
Exactly. Because you're looking forward to that
Okay
show.
with that.
And over time, you might even start to associate that pleasurable activity with exercise itself.
Oh, so you start to look forward to the workout.
Exactly.
So we've talked about like these kind of external strategies.
Yeah.
But is there anything we can do like on a purely mental level?
Oh, yeah.
To make these changes stick.
Yeah, I think even the language we use can have a profound impact on our mindset.
Okay, I remember this from the book.
Yeah,
The whole have to versus get to.
exactly.
So instead of I have to go to the gym,
You say, I get to go to the gym.
right,
I get to move my body. I get to take care of my health.
I get to feel strong.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's all about reframing those obligations.
There's opportunities.
Yeah. And recognizing that you do have the choice.
We do.
But even with the best strategies, like, we're all human.
Absolutely.
We're going to have those
We're
days
going to stumble.
where we mess up.
Yeah.
And I think that's where celebrating those small wins comes in.
Yes. I love
You
this.
know, giving yourself credit for those tiny victories.
It's about acknowledging your effort no matter how small it might seem.
So if you meditate for just 1 minute,
Celebrate it.
if you resist that donut,
Pat yourself on the back.
it's about progress, not perfection.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this whole world of atomic habits.
Yeah, we've just skimmed the surface.
But I think it's a great starting point.
Absolutely.
And I'm already feeling inspired to make some changes in my own life.
I love that.
So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your
It
wisdom.
was my pleasure. And remember, the true power of Atomic Habits lies not in simply reading the book, but in actually applying those principles to your own life.
So true. So for all of our listeners out there, I challenge you to choose one tiny habit you want to change
Yeah.
and start today. You might be surprised by the ripple effects it creates.
You never know what could happen.
And for a deeper dive into this fascinating world, we highly recommend checking out the book Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Great book.
Until next time, keep making those atomic changes.
Keep those habits rolling. See you on the next deep dive.